Can find our rest in God. I wanted to share with you just a quick thought this morning. I've noticed something about this. Here we are celebrating kind of the end of summer out here, and I've noticed that as people start to go back into the fall, back into the school year, that there's a lot of similarities between the start of the school year and kind of New Year's Day. Not so much resolutions, but people kind of recalibrating a little bit, saying, hey, fall's coming, I need to get back into a routine, I get back into a rhythm, set some goals for this upcoming fall. And so I want to talk about, just for a couple minutes, about that idea of setting goals. I think it has its roots in Scripture. There's a psalm that's recorded for us, Psalm 90, where Moses is praying. And in chapter 90, verse 12, Moses says this: "Teach us to number our days aright, that we may gain a heart of wisdom." Teach us to count our days correctly, to put value on them, so that we can gain a heart of wisdom. Some of the other translations, like the Amplified Version, says instead of that we may gain a heart of wisdom, it says that we may cultivate a heart of wisdom, which we bring to you. So we kind of do the work and then bring it to God for Him to fill it. We have to understand the value of the days first. The Message translation says it even more clearly. It says, "Teach us to live well and teach us to live wisely." Here's how Paul kind of echoes that same thing in Ephesians chapter 5. He says, "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise," kind of the same thing that Moses said there, "making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is." So here's Paul kind of echoing what was said by Moses in Psalm 90, that we've got to do something with the days we have. They are finite days. We can't add days to our life. As much as we'd like to, we can't make a day any longer than 24 hours. That's just always what it's going to be. And so we got to set our goals correctly in that. And so I want to give you just a couple of thoughts on how to set your goals correctly in doing this. The first one is that you have to remember that the fewer the goals that you have, the more likely that you are to fulfill those. Okay? Sometimes you can set so many goals that you become scattered. There's a guy, his name is Craig, so you know it's got to be wise, right? Craig? Craig Groeschel said, "If you want to do more, do less better." If you want to do more, do less better. And so I think what happens is, a lot of times I hear people say this: well, I need to work on prioritizing my schedule a little bit. I think it's probably better to schedule our priorities. And you can't have too many of those things on your schedule. So we've got to figure out what are the important things, and those have to go on our schedule first, and then put everything else around those. So I'll give you just an example for me. In the morning, I have two main priorities for myself. I want to spend time in the Word and just spend time praying, and I want to spend time exercising. So those things go on my calendar first, and then everything else gets scheduled around that as far as morning activities go. So I'm not trying to prioritize my schedule, but I'm taking what is my priority and I'm putting that on my schedule first. Now, I said the fewer number of goals. Now, let me add a little caveat, and I'm going to explain this for a second so that nobody accuses me of being sexist. All right? Let me explain the background on this first. Ladies, have you ever asked a guy that's sitting there kind of staring off into space what they're thinking about, and they say nothing? Mm-hmm. Right? And you don't believe them, right? You're going, no, you got to be thinking something. Well, here's the thing. Guys can really have these boxes and for their life. They can have a work box, and they can have a play box, and they can have a nothing box. They can have and when they're in one of those boxes, the rest of the world just doesn't even exist. So if they're in their work box, they're not thinking about you. They're not thinking about anything else except work. Okay? And so they do have a nothing box. So guys, for you, if you're going to set a couple of goals, you could try to set 1 or 2 goals per box that you have. Because once you go into that box, you're not thinking about the other boxes and the other goals there. So if you wanted to set a couple of goals for work, you could do that. If you wanted to set like maybe one goal regarding your physical health, you could do that. You know, you could kind of do that. Now, ladies, you don't believe us when we say that we're thinking about nothing, you know, because that's, your brains are wired differently than ours. You think about everything all the time. So even if you're at work, you're still thinking about home. And so for you, what I would suggest is still like the 1, 2, or 3 goals total. Don't try them for different roles of your life, because you'll be in one spot, you'll still be thinking about the other spots. And too many goals can make us too scattered, okay? Now, the second thing that I want you to remember about goals is this. Be very careful about making goals that you divide up to say that these are my spiritual goals and these are my non-spiritual goals, okay? Here's what the Bible says. Paul writes this in 1 Corinthians 10. He says, whatever you do, even if you're eating or drinking, whatever you do it all for the glory of God. That means that there isn't anything really, in God's eyes, they're all spiritual goals. Okay? There is no spiritual goals and non-spiritual goals. Everything that you're doing affects all of your life, which is going to affect all of your relationship with God as well. So don't think that way in setting your goals. Here's a spiritual goal for me. Here's a health goal for me. Well, they're all related. They all come down to giving God the glory. Now, third then, how many of you have ever heard this acronym for setting goals? It's called SMART. You ever heard that before, about setting SMART goals? Okay, so real quickly, the S means that your goals are specific. So you don't just say something like, I want to eat better. Well, that's, be more specific. I want to eat more fruits and vegetables. Or you can be very specific and say, I'm going to have at least 2 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. So you could have something very specific. Make your goal specific. The M is something that's measurable. How can you record that? How can you write that down? I love today to use some of the technology that we have. There's apps that you can, if you want to set a health goal, you got, the Fitbit, so will record your steps and your workout. You got other apps that you can punch in what food you're eating to count your calories. If your goal is maybe Bible reading, the U version has the different Bible programs on there, so you can be checking something off every day. So you're able to measure where you're going, okay? The A is for attainable. Okay, so if you are not, say that you've never run before, to say, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to start running 5 miles a day, 5 times a week, that's probably not attainable for you. So ramp it up, set realistic goals. Maybe say, my first goal is just get off the couch and walk around the block. Okay, that might be your attainable goal there. Now, the R is for relevant. Make sure that the goal actually is going to accomplish something. So here's what I like to ask. When I set a goal, I like to ask a question after that. It's this: so that. So if I say I want to eat this, eat better, so that, well, my physical health, so I could bring down my blood pressure, so that I don't have to take that medicine anymore, so that, so you're trying to say, is this relevant? Is it going to make a difference in my life? And then the T is for the time frame. I think that it's very important to pull out your goals at certain times and review them and say, are these goals still working for me? Am I on track? Am I off track? Did I way overestimate? And do I need to kind of go back to that realistic part and try to bring them in there again, make sure that they are attainable goals for me, but make sure that you're doing that. And then finally, this is one of the most important things that I've learned about setting goals, is that you need to have a stop doing list. If you're going to put goals on your schedule, that means that there's some things that you're simply going to have to stop doing. So like if you set a goal for yourself, if you said something like, I want to spend 30 minutes reading a book at night before I go to bed. That's one of my goals. Well, then maybe one of the things that you might have to stop doing at night is maybe the amount of time that you spend channel surfing on the TV, or there's something else that so you're going to have to come up with a stop doing list as well. In other words, if you're going to set these realistic goals that are going to be relevant to move your life forward, not everything you're doing right now could stay on your calendar. We have a finite number of days. So Moses said, teach us to number our days correctly. But then listen what he said just A couple verses after that, he asks God's blessing on it. He says, "May the favor of the Lord our God rest upon us, establish the work of our hands for us." And in case you didn't get it, he repeats himself. Yes, establish the work of our hands. So, but we have to do the part first of bringing the heart of wisdom, cultivating that. So as you start to go into this fall, if you're going to spend some time setting some goals, I encourage you to do that. This is a great time of year to do that before we get into the fall season. But just make sure, follow those ideas, and you're going to set some goals that God will help you be successful on those. Okay? All right, so